Salary transparency is something that has grown more and more within the tech job market over the last several years. And yeah, I'm doing it. I'm jumping on the bandwagon. So come with me as I explain what my cybersecurity salary progression has been over the last 12 years of my career. I'm not going to share what my current salary is for my role, but I'm going to share everything up until then. Let's talk about it. Let's get into it. Welcome back to Struggle Security, where we are normalizing struggling in cybersecurity. And like I mentioned before in the intro, I'm going to be jumping into salary transparency. Take a look at their YouTube channel. They have a YouTube, they have an Instagram. They go over all different types of career fields, really giving visibility into what salaries look like across multiple industries. Whether education, whether tech, whether the medical industry, they talk about what these salaries are, really giving visibility into what it looks like when you're jumping into these roles so that you can make a informed financial decision whether you want to go into those types of roles. As a disclaimer, I'm not sharing what my salary progression is to stunt or in any way try to brag or boast, but this is really to inform, to let you all know what it looks like for negotiations. I'm not saying this to brag or to boast, but I am saying this as 1, inspiration, 2, information, and 3, something that you can use as ammunition in order to negotiate fair salaries within your cybersecurity career. So let's jump right into it. I'm not going to belabor you with any more information. I'm going to be covering 3 things for each one of the roles: the organization or the industry type, I'm going to be covering the high-level responsibilities of that role, and I'm going to be covering the total compensation. I'm going to be breaking that down. So let's start off with my first one. Fresh out of college, I jumped into engineering. So my undergrad is in electrical engineering, and I jumped into what you call a electrical wire harness design engineer or electrical design release engineer role within an automotive tier 1 supplier. So for this, I was able to work in the automotive field, where I was able to design and work to design this particular wire harness designs and follow that throughout the process, going down to Mexico, coming back up to the plants in Michigan, and seeing that wire harness installed into different vehicles. So that was my main responsibility within that role. But let's get right to what you all want to know, the salary. So my base salary for that role was $54,000. And I had a $500 annual bonus. So we're getting there into $54,500 with an electrical engineering bachelor's degree and fresh out of college. That was my first role. Let's move on to the next one. After that role, I decided to go into the nuclear field. So it almost had like 2 different roles that I transitioned to. So I was a nuclear instrumentation and controls engineer, and then that transitioned into a nuclear cybersecurity engineer because my role had changed while I was with the organization. There, as a nuclear INC engineer, I was one of the nuclear engineers at the plant, responsible for the digital devices, whether the sensors, whether the assets and the components, making sure things were up to date and healthy so that the plant process, the commercial nuclear process, could generate electricity. I was one of the engineers on the ground, hard hat, steel-toe boots, jeans, walking down systems. So while I was there, my total compensation, or my base salary, really was $70,000. There was not really a base or a bonus structure to that role. So I really didn't get too much of a bonus while I was there. And there was some fluctuation in how much I can earn because we had what you call refueling outages, where the whole plant was shut down. The engineers could work extra hours in overtime. So that $70K base could fluctuate to $75,000 total or $77,000 total. So it's nowhere between $70,000 and $77,000 was my total compensation for that role. After that, I went from full-time roles, right? I was full-time permanent employee. Then I went on into a contracting role. In more videos, I can explain more of what that looks like. But in that contract role, I was a nuclear cybersecurity assessor. My high-level responsibilities were making sure that nuclear plants, commercial nuclear plants, were ready for their government cybersecurity assessments, and I was helping these plant environments to prepare for that inspection. I would be reviewing documentation, I would look at standards, I would look at what their overall cybersecurity program looked like, gave recommendation, and help to assess what the security considerations needed to be for the different assets and the different systems within the plant environment. That was fun. So my previous role, $70K full-time. Now this contract role really was salary that was life-changing. So I had an hourly rate. I had a what you call a per diem, which covered my food and living expenses and travel. My total, I don't want to get too much in the details of that, but the total overall compensation was $163,000 annually. It was somewhere around there. It could be more or it could be less based upon how much overtime I did. But when I was looking back at my W-2s, it was $163,000 is how much I made at that organization. Life-changing, right? I more than doubled my overall salary. Now I moved on to another role as a contracting role within another organization. Now this was a bit more senior in my role. I was a nuclear cybersecurity specialist, where this kind of made me branch out a little bit more. Not only was I doing a lot of the assessment work, but I was also advising, giving recommendations based upon the industry best practices and standards within the nuclear cybersecurity program. But I was also getting very technical in my role too. I was doing SAT and FAT testing, security assessment testing, functional assessment testing. While I was there in the nuclear plant environment, I was also hardening systems, getting them ready to be sent out to nuclear plants all around the world. Very, very serious type of business for cybersecurity within nuclear plant environments. My overall salary, this was another contract role, was anywhere between $75,000 and $80,000. And again, that had an hourly rate, a per diem, a living expense, all of that was kind of combined. In my next role, I went to a full-time role from contract, and I was a network security architect working for a utilities products organization. I wore several different hats while I was there. There, I was doing Department of Defense, NIST 853 risk management framework assessments, but I was doing the technical work where I was hardening the systems, designing the architecture, and really hardening and doing what you call stigging and scapping. I talk about this a lot. It was some grueling technical work, but it was really making sure that these devices were cyber secured while they were being put into government facilities. We actually got acquired too while I was there. So I was also doing penetration testing on different utility devices and assets. So total compensation or base salary was $147,500. I was able to negotiate a $5,000 sign-on bonus. And annually, I had a bonus of around $7,000. So my overall salary for this role was somewhere around the $160,000 total compensation. That was really good. And as you see, there was a dip from the contract to the full-time role salary. And that's typically how it goes. With contracting, you don't get holidays, you don't get 401k matching, you don't get investment for training, and pretty much the days that you don't work, you don't get paid for contract roles. Within full-time roles, you get all of those additional benefits, including like healthcare. So the total salary or the base salary typically is less. Next, I moved into a consulting role. I was a senior industrial security consultant, and there I was working for a cybersecurity consulting firm. And there is really when I started to branch out into the professional services area. These large firms or these cybersecurity firms, they go out and they win business from large organization, and then they deploy consultants like myself when I was with that organization in order to execute these services. Now, these industries involve oil and gas, nuclear, water, electrical, advanced manufacturing, you name it. There were so many different customers, so many different industries that I worked with. And these services included penetration testing, red teaming, security program assessments, tabletop exercises, incident response engagements, you name it. I was doing those services for industrial customers. So really was starting to branch out, and I was leading out in engagements, right? I was very much so customer facing, and that was a lot of fun, pretty much doing these services all around the world. Very fun stuff. So my base salary was $160,000. I had an annual performance bonus of $24,000. That was added into my salary at the end of the year. And I got RSUs, which were restricted stocks units. So I got roughly $24,000 also in restricted stock. So my salary there was a little over $200K, which came to about $208,000 total compensation. Next, I moved into more of a leadership role. I was there within a technology consulting firm. I was a cybersecurity consulting manager where I still executed individually or on individual engagements doing technical services, but I also had a team of individuals that I was able to deploy to do very similar work, whether they were hardening and assessing firewalls within industrial environments, or they were doing security risk assessments, pretty much doing a lot of the work that I did in my previous role. But also had a team doing this too. I was also able to bridge out into more understanding the business of cybersecurity, where I was working to win some of that business. I was writing proposals. I was writing statements of work. I was the lead for engaging with customers. I was the face of different engagements. It was a lot more responsibility and really moving into more of that leadership type of role. And here it was very different. Salary was the most that I had ever made at that time. Base salary was $190K. Base salary. I had an annual bonus first year of $32,000 performance bonus, and I had a sign-on bonus, which was just more than I ever thought that anybody could get. Was $100,000 sign-on bonus, $50,000 the first year, and it was $50,000 the second year. So the first year, my total compensation was somewhere around that $272,000 total compensation. Life-changing salaries. And then after that, I moved into the role that I'm in now, which I told you I'm not going to tell you what my current salary is, but I work at an engineering firm as an executive director of OT and cybersecurity. And my responsibilities is pretty much being a leader of this organization, building up the practice, building up the business, the strategy, being responsible for the sales strategy, and also leading and growing and developing our current talent. And like I said, I'm not going to say what that salary is, but it is more than my previous salary. So you can understand that cybersecurity is still an industry where you can get some very high salaries. You can get some very high total compensation. And hopefully this was a motivator for you. And if you had been struggling with understanding, hey, do I want to get into cybersecurity? Or, hey, what are some salaries that I can potentially make in this role? Hopefully that struggle has been alleviated by me sharing and being very transparent here. Subscribe to Salary Transparency, to their website or to their YouTube channel. And hopefully, again, this is Struggle Security, where we are normalizing struggling in cybersecurity. Sometimes salaries and salary progressions can be a struggle, but hopefully this has alleviated one of those struggles. Thanks, and come again for more of this type of content.